Hello and welcome to The Master's Voice, the podcast series on Mediabrief.com. It is MVP, The Master's Voice, but The Master's Voice acronym has been actually drawn from and been inspired by Most Valuable Player. This is from American sports parlance, and I dare say I have sitting close to me and smiling away one of the most wonderful, the most benign and the most straight-talking leaders, one of the most valuable players who has empowered and has been empowering the entire advertising and marketing space, not just in India, but I dare say across the world. So please join me in welcoming the wonderful and the peerless Sam Balsara, Chairman, Madison World.
Thank you, Pavan, for inviting me on your very look forward to show.
Thank you, Sam. You have been my most look forward to guest, and thank you for the kind words about the show. I'll also thank Aishwarya from Madison PR, who has actually made this interaction possible, and Ravi, your wonderful Ravi, who is amazing.
Yes, indeed. Ravi has been with me also, I think, for several decades now.
As have you with the entire industry, Sam. So, Sam, before I continue and we come on to the business end of our conversation, which is all about the questions that I want to ask you, let me very quickly first read out, and I don't know how I can be brief about Sam Balsara, but then the good thing is that everybody knows about you, Sam. So, I will read a brief profile for the benefit of those who might still perhaps have been living under a rock or just started out in the business, who might not know so much about you, Sam. So, by your leave, here goes. My distinguished guest on this episode of MVP The Master's Voice is Sam Balsara, Chairman, Madison World. Sam Balsara has near 50 years of experience in marketing and advertising, of which the last 34 years have been entrepreneurial. Sam has served as president and or chairman of almost every industry body in the country. The Economic Times Brand Equity Ad Agency Reckoner has ranked Sam as India's most influential media person for 11 years. Sam is also the recipient of the Advertising Agencies Association of India's Lifetime Achievement Award, Ad Club of Kolkata's Hall of Fame Award, and has entered the International Advertising Association's, that is the IAA's, Hall of Fame. Sam is the head of the completely Indian-owned Madison World, which offers services in 11 specialized functions across, now let me list them out for you: advertising, media, business analytics, out-of-home, PR, retail, rural, activation, entertainment and sports. Over the past 33-34 years, Madison has grown to become India's largest Indian-owned communications company, employing about 1,000 communication experts, serving around 500 advertisers. Madison Media is the largest independent media agency by share and the fifth largest independent media agency by size in the world, according to RECMA. And, I could go on. There is a whole 3 pages of the awards that he has won. Sam, I'm not going to read them out. Everybody knows about you. But let me try and take a stab at describing Sam in one short paragraph, okay? And I will have to actually take help from a wonderful excerpt from a publication. So, Sam at 71 is driven by vision, enthusiasm and energy. It can drain you to see how much Sam can pack in a day. Visit 2 cities, attend an industry forum, solve a client's complaint, attend a media bash and return calls across the country. So says a publication. And Sam is no stranger to a challenging situation because he is also known to speak his mind without mincing his words. Which is why I'm delighted that Sam Balsara, Chairman, Madison World, is my distinguished guest on this episode of The Master's Voice on Mediabrief.com.
My pleasure. Thank you, Pavan, once again for inviting me to be on your very important show.
Thank you, Sam. So, Sam, my first question for you, first things first. I saw the wonderful video for the Goa Fest, where you're dancing your heart out. So, what do you expect from Goa Fest this year?
Well, what I expect from Goa Fest, I think I expect a lot because it's going to be after, a gap of 3 years that we're going to be meeting at Goa. And I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for everyone to bond with each other. So I think the most important thing besides, of course, all the learning and the awards and all the drinking that we'll go through, is I think the bonding with each other. People who we have not met for years finally will be seeing each other in person. And I think the value of that is really invaluable. Because I think in all this COVID and work from home and all that, I think the human touch has been missing. And I'm not a great fan of working from home, because I think it's only when you meet people, when you touch people's lives, that interesting, magical things happen. Wow. So, and I'm sure that'll happen at Goa Fest too.
Wonderful, wonderful. Beautiful thought, Sam. So what would you advise everyone attending it, to look out for, to get from Goa Fest this year? Yes, there will be the connections, there will be the contacts, there will be the relationships that will probably be rekindled and ideas, etc. But one thing that you would want them to come back with?
Well, one thing that, if I may request all participants to do is, in all the merrymaking, I would say, let's try and also attend the seminars which have been put together with a lot of thought. And every year I think they've been done with a lot of thought. But sometimes it disturbs me to see that the hall is not too full. And I think that's a pity, because after all the effort the organizers take in bringing people from all over the world, not just from India, to see an empty hall is not a very good thing, because it's also a lost opportunity at broadening and widening your mind and horizon, listening to different points of view, which I think is ultimately very important in shaping your career.
Right. Really. Very wise advice. Thank you, Sam. And I'm sure everybody who's listening to the podcast and who will be there at Goa Fest, it is after all Goa Fest, and they will listen to you and take heed. So Sam, let's talk about another amazing brand. Okay. Let's talk about Madison World. It's been 34 years since you started Madison, in India. Would you tell me what have been the highs and lows of this interesting journey? Short question.
My God, a short question, but I could speak on it for hours on end. Well, certainly there have been many highs and lows. I must say, to start with, that, a lot of people assume that there would be a lot of travails in starting up. I must say life for me was a little different. Starting up was relatively strain-free or stress-free. And I think the first 5-6 years just glided by. But I think the first stress, if I may say so, came soon after that, when I must confess I did not anticipate the sort of disaster that would strike Madison when I took the decision to sort of not play ball with an international agency called DMBNB, who had become my partner, to enable me to handle P&G's own brands that were put on the plate. So that was a trying time, if I may say so myself. And over a period of 3-4 months, I lost as much as 70% of my business. And of course, the most cruel blow was losing the Godrej creative business, especially the creative business of Synthol, which I had nurtured for very many years. But, life goes on. I think I learned to live with challenges and put the past behind me. If I may also mention, at that time when I was feeling particularly low, and of course at that time my resources were extremely limited, I heard on CNBC a Southeast Asian gentleman say things like that real success can come only after real failure.
Wow.
So I took heart in that and said, boy oh boy Sam, this is your real failure, so now wait for the success to come.
Wow.
And I think in a way it did.
You do believe in the understatement, no? In a way it did. Tell me about the highs now after that low.
So I think the first high, of course, was starting Madison itself effortlessly. I think I kind of won the businesses of Godrej and Tata's Nelco Blue Diamond Television to get the agency started. The fact that I chanced upon an existing agency, Madison, that was not doing too well, which was introduced to me by a friend of mine called Sunil Kapoor. And it was owned by a Parsi gentleman. So I kind of took it over from him fully in about 2-3 years' time. So that was clearly a high, getting started on my own. I think a major high a few years later was actually winning the Procter & Gamble Media AOR for Madison. That clearly, I think, was a very, very big high in retrospect, because it also signaled the arrival of media AORs in India, because at that time, until that time, there was no concept of a media AOR. And, many actually in the industry today would not know, but my association, the 3 A's of I, with whom I was very actively involved as an office bearer, actually was tooth and nail against the arrival of media AORs. And I must say I went along. I didn't oppose the 3 A's of I, but as I heard Martin Sorrell once say or tell an audience, that the horse has already bolted from the stable and you can't do too much about getting him back. So that was clearly one of the highs. I think the other high, if I may mention, and I think that comes from my belief that, when you're on to something good, I think you should stay with it. I think I focused a lot on media AORs in those days, and that did result, paid off very rich dividends. We went on to win the Coca-Cola AOR, we went on to win the Airtel AOR, we went on to win the ITC AOR, and many other very large, prestigious AORs of TVS, who's still with us.
Wow.
Somewhere along the way, when AORs first started, they were only buying AORs. So over the years, we managed to convert all of them into buying plus media planning AORs.
Right.
So those clearly were the big highs. I think the other big high was once my daughter Lara entered the business. We pursued an aggressive, what I call a diversification strategy. And that is, the success of the media AOR soon led me to become a strong believer in the concept of specialization in advertising, or what was then called the concept of unbundling. Because I thought to myself, see what a refreshing change has come about in the media agency industry. Now, by then, we had a cadre of specialist people who took pride in their business, the fact that they were media specialists. By doing the same job repeatedly over and over again, they became specialists, they were adequately rewarded, and the client was delighted because media AORs were able to offer a terrific high value added service at a very reasonable cost to the advertiser. So looking at that, then I decided to get into outdoor, then PR, then rural, and many other specialist divisions. And we followed the same approach that, either hire a super specialist who had a reputation in that specialization or who had years of experience in it. If he was not hireable, then make him your partner and then get on with it, and then leave him a little alone and nurture the unit but not interfere too much because that would defeat the whole purpose. And I must say that worked rather well too. That is why we evolved the concept of Madison World, which is today a conglomerate of many different communication units specializing in different things, from advertising to media to PR to retail to outdoor to sports management, rural, and the like, rural activation, urban activation, and whatnot. And we continue in the same direction even today, looking for newer avenues for growth.
And Sam, any regrets or any wrong decisions that you might have taken?
I think one of the pitfalls, and I must say it's my own doing, is that when digital started first bobbing its head up, and it had already become reasonably sizable in the Western countries. In India, I took the view that my traditional media people should also handle digital and should become digital experts. Because I thought it's not that I underestimated digital. I knew that digital was going to be very important. But because of that reason, I thought if the traditional media person is not going to handle digital like the way he doesn't handle outdoor, then what is he going to do?
Right.
And I persisted with that for about 5 years. And that, I think, in hindsight, was a mistake.
So you think you should have gotten specialists?
We should have gotten specialists for digital. And that was a huge blunder, I dare say. And then as soon as afterwards we started getting in specialists and looked upon Madison Digital as a separate specialist unit, no doubt attached to Madison Media, it started doing very well. We then went on to acquire outside unit called Hive Minds in Bangalore, which is now a runaway success, which is a company that is majority owned by Madison, but where the founder and the entrepreneur, a lady called Jyotirmay, plays a leading role and uses her energy to drive tremendous growth and offer a terrific high value added service to those who seek digital expertise.
Wow. Amazing. That was a really very interesting account, Sam. And I dare say that one of the most significant contributions that you made to the entire space is how you created the category of media AOR and then broadened its spectrum. Really amazing.
Well, I must also say that I think whilst I've been successful in doing this, regretfully, I think my creative arm took a nosedive. I think because I don't know if it was my own doing, perhaps it was, that, people thought that if the guy is good in media, how can he be good in creative? And therefore, I think we soon lost our reputation in creative. And it's been a struggle to kind of get our creative agency to be one of the lead runners. Of course, it's doing a very good job with quite a few clients. But
where is it now?
It's kind of definitely not in the top 10.
Okay. Any plans? Of course, you'll be at it.
No, well, we're at it. Hopefully, we'll succeed one day.
Sooner rather than later, I hope. Super Sam, you've done virtually everything, and Madison World has done everything right so far and has grown across so many verticals, more than 1,000 people. Where do you see Madison going forward from here?
Well, very simple. Larger, stronger, better, and continuing to be the darling of clients. Because I think one thing we believe in is that we are only as good as the work we put out yesterday. So I believe there is no alternative to continuing to delight clients with some real innovative new thinking, continuously hiring a new stream of young people who can innovate, who can come up with new concepts, with new ideas that can take advantage of the rapidly changing environment.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful formula. Sam, client engagement is a very, very important part of this entire relationship. You do great work, you tell them about it, you give a client what you think he needs rather than what he asks for. So, what is a great way, a fail-safe way, and how often should client engagement be executed? Plans?
I think client engagement is, the basis of our relationship. I don't think, whilst it is true that there are today global agencies who believe that, it is the work that should speak for itself. But I think it's a combination of things, and I'm a great one in personal relationships, not just for any sort of value for myself, but I love meeting people, I love talking to people, I love engaging with people, whether they are my clients or whether they are not my clients. And I think this has helped me tremendously on understanding people better, understanding their own sort of compulsions. And I think all this goes a long way in better client relationships.
Okay, overview statement and insights. What would you say about the opportunities that the current environment provides to the advertising sector in India?
Well, I think for a long time I've been feeling that, advertising is really a sunrise industry in India. Although, it may be at least 50 years old, it is a sunrise industry. And I'll tell you why I say this. I say this for two reasons. One, advertising today as a percent of GDP is still only 0.35%. Or thereabouts of our India's GDP. Now, globally, this figure is closer to some 0.8%, and in many smaller economies, the figure is as high as 1.5%. So, I have no doubt that as competition increases, and if we think that there is intense competition in India, I think you ain't seen anything yet. And I think as that happens, I think advertising is going to grow by leaps and bounds. Already, I think out of last 5 years, I think India is the fastest growing advertising market in the world for possibly, I think, 3 or 4 of those 5 years. So, my belief is not just based on my perception, but it's actually beginning to happen. And of course, the second thing is, I think I'm a great believer in our country, India. I think, we couldn't be in a better position, or we couldn't ask for us to be in a better position than what we are in today compared to the rest of the world. I know, of course, India has many challenges, but then I think you must view everything in the correct context. View the challenges faced by some of the other, even the more advanced nations of the world. And I think India is in a reasonably sweet spot. Whether it is demographic dividend or whether it is the potential of the economy, we've become a reasonably large economy. I think countries are beginning to recognize our importance. I think all this is putting us in India into a very enviable position. And I think both these factors together bode very well for the future of advertising in India.
Excellent. Really good. And challenges or any sort of threats or weaknesses?
Yes, of course. I think for the very same reason that I just explained to you, I think because of this, the challenges before us are also increasing. Because what I just said is common knowledge to every advertising agency and to every marketer around the world. And therefore, they're all looking at India with binoculars. And I think, whilst I'm not, of course, privy to them, I think, if the global agencies have a top 3 list of priorities, one of their priorities definitely is to grow rapidly in India. That is certainly a top global priority, as I see it, of most of the agencies, global agencies. And I think this puts a lot of unnecessary pressure, unfortunately, on the industry, onto the agencies, because everybody wants to grow by hook or by crook and at any cost. I think this puts advertisers, at a unique advantage and gives them a leverage to sort of bring prices down, to resort to almost practices that may border on unethical arm twisting. And whilst you may say that all is fair in love and war, to a considerable extent, why I rue this fact is because this is not good for the industry as a whole. I think the advertising industry needs to have a reasonable surplus for itself so that it can invest in it. Advertising is soft power. Advertising needs to be nurtured. For advertising to be nurtured, you have to be able to attract good talent. And good talent, as we all know now, is not cheap. There was a time, even in Madison's 34 years, that we have been able to hire students or MBAs from, good institutes, if not IIM Ahmedabad. And today, the reality is that we are not able to do that from the top-notch named management institutes of India. MICA, which was started as a communications institute, today, I believe most agencies find their starting salaries too high to be able to afford them. Now, that surely is not a good sign for the industry, according to me. And that is why I rue this fact.
But there are also a lot of maybe smaller institutes and promising youngsters. So you need to nurture them also, right? I mean, that's the talent pipeline.
I must say you make a very good point, and I must say that we have found, based on our past experience, and we have been doing a lot of experimenting, that some brilliant students from institutes that are not so well known or well regarded actually have been performing brilliantly for us.
Wow.
And they're highly motivated, and it is our sort of ambition to really motivate them and promote them and make them performing managers in a very short while.
Wonderful. And with the kind of mentoring that they will receive, if they are fortunate enough to come directly up to you, but then even the others whom you have mentored, and all your vertical heads and function heads. So they are in a very good place, and I think they will become the best brand ambassadors out there amongst their ilk.
Yes, I think one of the things that gives me satisfaction is to see ex-Madisonites doing extremely well in the industry. I think you have CVL Srinivas, who is with us, who's the head of, Group WPP. You have Ajit, who's done extremely well for himself, and now he's back in India after his travel around the world. You have Karthik, who heads OMD now, who's also an ex-Madisonite. So it's nice to see Madisonites dotting our industry all over. But I guess if you've been around for 34 years, that's not much of an achievement. I mean, it would happen in the natural course of things.
So Sam, let's change tracks here. Top marketing trends. List the 3 or 5 that you hold very important, which will probably continue to sort of drive the course.
So I think for the same reasons that I mentioned earlier, which is, India is the focus of the world, and obviously everybody knows that we have 1.3 billion people, and we are not exactly a prosperous country, but we are kind of getting there very fast. I mean, if we had 200 million consuming class earlier, I think we are now 300 million, and those 300 million have little more bucks to spend and even go beyond necessities, some comforts and luxury. One of the interesting things I noticed is that, for example, air conditioners, the way they are selling this summer, they're just flying off the shelves.
Wow.
Now, until a few years ago, air conditioners were considered the ultimate luxury in India.
Right.
I mean, today I think the middle class is buying air conditioners. So clearly there are visible signs of change in India, of consumerism taking over. But all this is, of course, putting tremendous pressure on marketers too. Their competition is increasing, and the war hasn't helped. We were already on a very high inflationary trend in terms of raw materials. Russian invasion of Ukraine has made it worse, and inflation has increased, which is putting a lot of pressure on marketers to deliver their bottom line. I think the pressure on marketers is how do they balance keeping an eye on the stock market and the prices on the one hand, which are dictated considerably by the kind of profit growth they show, and spending on advertising to provide an insurance to their market share. Because this is a delicate balance I think many marketers are caught in. And I think those who play this balancing act well are going to succeed and come out winners.
Right. So Sam, programmatic and ad fraud. What's the size and scale of the programmatic space and ad fraud, and where does the buck stop?
So programmatic clearly is beginning to take off in India. I think if you see our Pitch Madison report, we have been reporting for the last 3 years. I think every year a few percentage points keep going up. So programmatic is definitely here to stay. On ad fraud, I would say, well, it's the nature of the beast. I mean, digital obviously is a good thing that has happened to the world at large, but with every good thing that happens, it comes with a few sort of ifs and buts. And I think it is on the users and agencies like Madison to come up with interesting new ways of how to, if not eliminate, how to reduce the impact of such fraud on advertisers. So actually, we have come out with a white paper almost, I think, 2 years ago, listing down a list of 5 or 6 things which at Madison we do in order to sort of restrict ad fraud.
What are they?
I think I won't go into the details now. They are sort of technical measures as to what you should do and what you should not do in terms of.
Okay, and to what extent do you think is or how much is the level of awareness or ignorance thereof about ad fraud and programmatic amongst client representatives? How far is that responsible?
I think awareness is there, but
ability to tackle
is of course limited, and also accompanying it is the attractiveness of digital as a medium, because as you know, I mean, no medium could grow at 35 to 50% every year for the last 5 years if it was not offering real value to the advertiser. So that is the bottom line. So because digital offers great value to advertisers, I think that is the reason advertisers are kind of okay to accept a little bit of fraud. Perhaps 10-20% of it is going waste, but what to do? Don't forget, I mean, the world is spending 60% of its total AdX on digital now. And in India, we are only at about 30%, half that.
Right. And since we're talking about AdX and percentages, I wanted to ask this to you a little later. But, of all the mediums that we have in India, I think one of the oldest and perhaps the first social media kind of platform amongst linear was radio. But it is really sad that this free to consume medium, so popular across the government and the now private FM networks across the country and going to the back of beyond, is still struggling and hobbling along on crutches at a 3.5 to 4% of the AdX. What would you do you agree that radio deserves to be supported and should be persisted with? And I do, and radio owners and leaders have said that next year we are celebrating the 100th year and we must celebrate it and tell the world that radio is really here and not going anywhere. But what advice would you give as a real respected thought leader to the radio owners?
Well, I've not given a lot of thought to it, but yes, I do tend to agree with you that I think radio or audio is a little underutilized, and especially in view of the fact that audio, especially in India, our songs and our lyrics, and we are brought up from a young age listening to advertising jingles and all of that. So they've had a profound influence on our lives. I think the arrival of digital has put further pressure, unfortunately, on radio as it has on print. However, I think radio will re-evolve not perhaps the way it is, but as part of the overall digital medium, I think audio would get reinvented, I'm sure.
Right. And what are your views, Sam, on print?
I often hear my print baron friends ruining the rapid share decline of print, and I think print is now at about 22% share and has become the number 3 medium. But I think I want you to know that globally print is only 5% of the market.
Yeah.
And in India, it's at 22%. There are only 2 countries of the world which have as high a share as 22%, which is Germany and India.
Yeah, Denmark started giving out newspapers for free, I think close to a decade ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, possible. In Europe, it's a bad scene.
Yeah. Third-party cookies, Sam, being persisted with still by the biggest transgressors like Facebook and Google. Your views, likely impact, advice for practitioners.
I mean, I'm not a digital expert, but I would say I think already there is a fair amount of evolved thinking. The fact that cookies are going to go away has been around for quite some time. And I think there is already a fair amount of evolved thinking on how we would still, take advantage of the digital world and digital advertising in a cookieless world. And I'm quite sure that the industry is preparing itself rather well for a cookieless world.
Okay. And I must say thank you to Apple for having given a kita to the exploiters of third-party cookies. Right. So, Sam, 5 words to describe the advertising and marketing space. 5 words.
5 words. So, I would say exciting, adventurous, passionate, all-consuming, but in spite of everything, very rewarding and satisfying.
Yeah, rewarding not just for the practitioners, but also for nation, society, economy.
Nation, society, viewers, readers.
Absolutely. Right, Sam. Tell me, what gives you a spring to your step every morning when you begin your day?
Well, I think, advertising is a very, very exciting, adventurous, all-consuming passion for me, and I think as it is for every practitioner. So I think I look upon every new day with tremendous anticipation. I think most days don't disappoint me. There's always something new, exciting happening. We're able to crack a problem. We're able to come up with something unique. We're able to come up with a unique new idea for a client. We're able to win a new client. We're able to, satisfy a new client. We're able to get laurels from a client. And of course, occasionally there is the bad news of our going to lose a client, which is always a bad thing. And of course, life is full of challenges. There are people issues, losing people, how to hire more people. There are challenges of, balancing the cash flow and whatnot. But all that keeps one going. I guess that's what makes life worth living.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Sam, I really enjoyed myself. I loved the conversation. And I'm sure that everybody who listens and tunes into MVP The Master's Voice podcast on Mediabrief.com is going to agree with me that this is definitely a wonderful episode. So, a lot of insights from you and very rewarding indeed. What did you think of our conversation so far, Sam?
I think it was good. You got me to say a lot of things, and I must say, keep up the good work. I mean, I personally enjoy listening to people's stories. I think I learn a lot from them, and as I grow older, I think this is a tremendous learning opportunity for, I think, both younger and mature people to learn from other people's stories, because I think that is how you can cross-pollinate ideas and come up with your own unique approach to life's problems and opportunities. So Pavan, keep up the good work. Keep interviewing newer and newer interesting people and keep spreading knowledge with the Master's Voice and Mediabrief.com. You've been doing an admirable job in the last few years. Keep it up.
Thank you very much indeed, Sam. As kind as he is self-effacing and soft-spoken and direct-spoken. Sam Balsara, Chairman Madison World, was my distinguished guest on this episode of MVP, The Master's Voice, the podcast series from Mediabrief.com. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, found it rewarding as much as I did. And, well, till we meet again in the next episode of MVP, The Master's Voice, the podcast series on Mediabrief.com, this is your host and friend Pavan Chawla saying, take care, stay safe, bye-bye.